So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this wonderful evening. As you all know, that today is World's Environment Day. So, we are going through some painful times in this for the past 2 years. I mean, 1.5 years. As you all know, that we are going through a very bad pandemic, which has affected the entire world. So, in this Environmental Day, let's come together and hold our hands and save this beautiful world which we called Earth. It's a wonderful planet to live in and make it as it was before 2020. And on this beautiful day and the evening of this World Environment Day, we are gladly present Dr. Sujoy Dasgupta, who is a renowned IVF specialist in Kolkata. He is currently a consultant of reproductive medicine in Genome Fertility Center, Kolkata. He is a visiting consultant in RSV Hospital, Kolkata, and Woodlands Multi-Speciality Hospital. He is presently the managing committee member of Bengal Obstetrics and Gynecological Society. He is also a member of the Endocrinology Committee, FOGSI. He is a convener of Spectrum MRCOG course, Kolkata, and is also a winner of Professor Jeffrey Chamberlain Award RCOG World Congress, London in 2019. So, with his vast experience, today we are going to discuss, he will give us insights on a topic which is today in the world a very highlighting topic, that is infertility. So Dr. Dasgupta will provide us with a lot of information on this management of infertility. And it's over to you, Dr. Dasgupta. Stage is all yours. I'll just stop
Thank you. Thank you. At the outset, I'd like to thank Bharat Serum for inviting me on this World Environment Day and giving me this opportunity. And thank you, Mr. Mitra, for your kind introduction. Now, first, let me share my screen. I think the screen is visible to everybody.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So today's discussion is not something about medical for medical people. Rather, we will try to avoid some medical jargon. Rather, we'll try to restrict ourselves. We'll try to restrict the use of medical jargons, and we'll try to use the common language to make people understand the infertility, how it's affecting the people, and the reasons for infertility, and how we are usually managing the infertility and the different types of infertility. Okay. Now, first of all, what's needed for pregnancy? Okay, this is a simple thing. For pregnancy, both male and female partners have important contribution. In male, the sperms are produced inside the testicles, which are lying in the scrotum, the sac outside the outside the body. Now, why the testicles are lying outside the body? Because the sperm production needs temperature, which should be at least 2 to 3 degrees Celsius less than our body temperature. That's why the scrotum is situated outside the body and it contains the testicles. And from these testicles, the sperms are matured in a small gland called epididymis. And from this epididymis, they are traveling through the sperm conducting duct called vas deferens. And ultimately, they are coming in the ejaculated duct. And there, they are waiting for ejaculation to happen. When the ejaculation starts during sexual intercourse, the sperms along with the semen and along with the seminal fluid, they are deposited. They are just coming out from the penis through the urethra, and they are deposited inside the vagina. Now, in the vagina, the cervix can hold the sperms for number of period of time, and rather it's the cervix which can act as filter for the sperms, because it will allow only the healthy and the motile sperms to enter into the uterus, and all other sperms will be expelled. Now from this cervix, the sperms enter the uterus to travel to the fallopian tube. Meanwhile, the ovaries are containing eggs inside the follicles. That is the sacs-like structure inside the ovaries, which are called follicles. And follicles mature. And after the follicles are matured, they are releasing the eggs from the ovary. This is called ovulation. That is rupture of the egg from the ovary. And this ovulation is usually happening by 14th day of the menstrual cycle. And then after this ovulation, the egg is collected by the fallopian tube, and inside the fallopian tube, the eggs and sperms meet to form the embryo, and then this embryo again travels down from the tube into the uterus, and finally it's implanted, that is it's attached to the uterus to give rise to pregnancy. Therefore, for pregnancy to happen, we need normal sperm production, transport of sperms in the semen, deposition of sperms in the vagina, transport of sperm from the vagina through cervix, uterus, and the tubes. And in female partner, we need production and maturation of eggs in the ovaries, ovulation, finally the meeting of eggs and sperms inside the tube to form the embryo, and transport of embryo down the tube into the uterus, and then finally the implantation. Therefore, in essence, 4 factors are required. Number 1 is the sperm, number 2 is the uterus, number 3 is the tube, and number 4 is the ovary. Now, there are lots of myths about intimacy, how people should have intimacy to have pregnancy. There are lots of myths. There is a concept called timed intercourse. That is, intercourse should happen around the time of ovulation to maximize the chance of pregnancy. Yeah, this is totally true that timed intercourse improves the chance of pregnancy. But it has been found that if we ask the couple to have intercourse only during the time of ovulation, okay, this will lead to tremendous stress in both husband and wife. And some people are suffering from sexual intercourse, and even male are worse affected than female just because of stress. That is, they cannot take the stress that intercourse should happen on a particular day. Rather, we therefore encourage to have regular intercourse at least 2 to 3 times in a week. It has been found that if a couple is practicing regular intercourse 2 to 3 times a week, there will be enough sperms inside the fallopian tube around the time of ovulation. So therefore, the timing, there is nothing called perfect timing. Now, often we get this question, doctor, the sperms are coming out from the vagina after intercourse. Should I lie down for 30 minutes, etc.? It does not help. Because semen consists of 2 things. One is a liquid, another the thing is sperms. Sperms are not visible. Sperm will go inside the uterus very quickly because sperms are very rapid in their movement. Only the fluid will come out, and the couple have the idea that everything is coming out. So it is not true, and there is nothing to worry if the fluid is coming out. And there are lots of myths about this thing, like excessive masturbation is the cause of infertility. This is not true. Some people are saying that semen is becoming thin, and that's why I'm not able to get pregnant. That is not also true, because semen, we cannot judge the amount of sperms in the semen just by saying that thin or thick semen. We need to check the semen in the laboratory. And of course, I think into 2021, we are not in the position to say that only females are responsible and only females should be evaluated, because we need to see both the partners together and we should evaluate both the partners. Now, the reasons for infertility. First of all, in female. Number 1, there may be problem in egg production. The reasons may be increased age. As the age increases, the quantity and quality of eggs both are declining in the ovary. That's why the pregnancy, the rate of pregnancy is low after 35, and the rate of pregnancy is significantly low after when the female age is more than 40. There may be some disease in the pituitary gland. This is a small gland lying inside the brain. Although it's a small gland, we call it master gland because it controls activities of various organ systems in our body. A pituitary gland secretes some hormones which rather controls the activities of ovaries. Therefore, if there are problems in pituitary gland, there will be problem in egg production. If the woman had previous surgery to ovary because of removal of ovary or even cyst removal of the ovary, it can affect the sperm. It can affect the egg production because it can damage the ovary. Infection like mumps or some infection like pelvic inflammatory disease and in our country tuberculosis, all this can affect the egg production in the ovaries. Of course, there are some drugs, particularly the chemotherapeutic drugs, and if the woman had cancer treatment, like radiation inside the pelvis for treatment of some particular cancer like uterus, cancer of uterus, cancer of cervix, or cancer of some bladder or urinary tract, in that case, it can affect the egg production ability of the ovaries. There are some genetic factors because some women may have some genetic problems for which the egg production is hampered. Smoking and alcohol are important for both the sex and it can affect the egg production. And contrary to our common perception, we get to see some women who are smoking regularly and taking heavy dose of alcohol. And there is something called autoimmune disease. I think because of this pandemic, we are coming to know about the immunity, cytokine storm. I think almost all of us are familiar with this issue. What happens sometimes, our body's own protective mechanism, that is immune system, that acts against our own body. Therefore, the immune system, whose function was to prevent the bacteria, virus, etc., the foreign bodies, rather they are becoming hyperactivated, and therefore they are thinking sometimes, the immune system is thinking sometimes that his body's own system is not body's own. Therefore the immune system thinks that ovary is not belonging to the body. Therefore the immune system acts against ovary and it damages the egg. So all of this can affect the egg production. Secondly, egg production may be adequate, but there may be problem in ovulation. There may be adequate number of eggs, but ovulation is not happening. That is, eggs are not getting matured and ruptured. One is thyroid disease, high prolactin and high androgen. Androgen is something called male hormone like testosterone. But remember, even in female, some amount of androgen is required for the ovaries to act. If androgen is high, then ovulation cannot happen. But the most common cause of anovulation, the problem in ovulation, is polycystic ovary disease, that is PCOS or PCOD. And please remember, PCOS is hormonal disorder. PCOS is nothing to do with cyst. Sometimes women are saying that, okay, doctor, I am having cyst. Remember, PCOS is not the disease of the cyst, it's rather hormonal disorder. There is some disease called endometriosis. What is endometriosis? See, the lining of the womb, the lining of the uterus is called endometrium. And it's because the lining of the womb which is shed, the menstruation happens. Sometimes for some unknown reasons, the lining of the womb, the endometrium, lies inside the body, inside the pelvis, around the tubes, around the ovaries, around the intestine, around the urinary tract. And in this endometrium, which is situated outside the uterus, monthly bleeding still can happen. And this blood cannot come out of the vagina because in normal endometrium, the blood can come out of the vagina and you see it as menstruation. But in endometriosis, what happens? The blood accumulates inside the ovaries or inside the pelvis, it cannot come out. As a result, there will be severe pain and there will be something called adhesion, that is, one organ will be attached to another, like uterus, ovary, tubes, everything will be attached to one another. Therefore, the pregnancy cannot happen and there will be problem in ovulation. If you take excessive painkiller, particularly around the time of ovulation, some painkiller, this is called NSAID, that is non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. If you take these painkillers around day 12, day 13 or day 14 of the cycle, the ovulation will be impaired. Again, there are some genetic factors. Smoking, alcohol are important. But remember, the modifiable factor is obesity. If you can reduce weight, even if you can reduce weight by 5% of your ideal weight, then also you can restore your ovulation. Now, the number 3 is the problems inside the tubes. The fallopian tubes may be blocked. The most common reason in our country is, even worldwide, is the pelvic inflammatory disease, which is a type of sexually transmitted disease, which can cause abnormal discharge, abnormal bleeding, and it can cause sometimes the abnormal pain. Okay. And pelvic tuberculosis, that is the tuberculosis inside, can happen inside the ovaries as well. And remember, tuberculosis is not limited to the chest. Tuberculosis can affect every organ system of our body, that is known as TB. If the woman had previous surgery in the pelvis, that is surgery to the uterus, tubes, ovaries, etc., it can also cause problems in the functioning of the tubes. Sometimes there may be some problem in the tubes from birth. And and fibroids, these are common things. Remember, fibroid is something called tumor of the uterus. These are not cancerous. And remember, all fibroids do not require surgery because very few fibroids are usually associated with infertility. Most of the fibroids, we can ignore them. Next one is the smoking. Again, smoking can impair the function of the fallopian tubes. And if the lady had previous ectopic pregnancy, fallopian tube functioning will be impaired. What is ectopic pregnancy? We have shown that pregnancy usually happens inside the uterus. But if the embryo starts growing inside the fallopian tube and it does not come down into the uterus, this is called ectopic pregnancy. And ectopic pregnancy is something life-threatening because there is no hope for the baby. Rather, if the ectopic pregnancy ruptures, in that case, the mother's life will be endangered. Now, problems inside the uterus. Fibroids. Remember, only those fibroids which are called submucous fibroids, that is the fibroids which are situated inside the lining of the uterus, this can cause the problem, the infertility. If the lady had previous surgery inside the uterus, like previous DNC, previous abortion, etc., in that case, something we know popularly called washing inside the uterus, that can cause problem. If again the infection like tuberculosis and PID and sexually transmitted diseases like chlamydia, gonorrhea, they can damage the uterus. Radiation inside the pelvis, they can damage the uterus. Hormonal disease, PCOS and obesity, they can affect the ovulation as well as they can cause some changes inside the uterus. And again, endometriosis is the risk factor for problem in the uterus because there is a particular type of endometriosis, we call it adenomyosis. That is when the blood deposits inside the wall of the uterus and therefore the uterus size increases, we get bulky uterus, and this is called adenomyosis, and this can cause sometimes the problem in conceiving. Now, how males can be responsible for infertility? The most common cause in male we see is the problem in sperm production. In very few cases, we see the problem is remaining inside the pituitary gland. That is that there is a problem in the pituitary gland. And remember, pituitary gland disease accounts for very few cases of male infertility, but we say pituitary gland disease is easier to treat if the male is having problem in sperms because of pituitary gland disease. In most cases, this couple do not require any invasive procedure like IUI, IVF, etc. Rather, we can supplement the hormone from outside, and if we can supplement the hormone for 6 to 12 months, in most cases, the sperm production can be restored, and the couple can conceive by naturally. Unfortunately, the pituitary gland disease accounts for hardly 5 to 10% cases of male infertility. Other things, thyroid disease, and remember diabetes. We sometimes have seen that men who became father previously, who became the father of a baby previously, now they are coming with azoospermia just because of diabetes, and sometimes they may suffer from undiagnosed diabetes because they don't know that they are having diabetes. Only when we are going for investigation for sperm problems, and then we are coming to know that yes, they are having uncontrolled diabetes. If the man had testicular injury, remember testicular injury is very common, but if the testicular injury was severe and if it was not treated, it can cause problem in sperm production. And of course, testicular tumor. Remember two things. If there is male infertility, if there is problem in sperms, it may be the earliest sign of testicular tumor or cancer. Therefore, in all men who are having sperm problems, we need to examine the testicles. On the other hand, the men who are having sperm problems, who are suffering from male infertility, in long term, they can develop testicular tumor. Therefore, there are certain groups of men whom we are advising self-testicular examination. That is, we are telling these men, please remember to check your testicle at least once a month. Go to the washroom and remove your clothes and see in front of the mirror, check your testicles. If there are any problems, you find any swelling or any abnormalities, please don't hesitate to contact your doctor. Mumps, remember, if the mumps happens, mumps you know probably is a viral disease that usually causes fever and parotid gland, that is the swelling of the cheeks, and it's painful. If the mumps happens after the 12 years of age, that is if the man attains the puberty, if his testicular growth started and his the secondary sex character, the body hair growth, the beard and mustache, all development has started. If the mumps affects the testicles after puberty, it can cause orchitis, that is severe pain and inflammation in the testicles. There are some men we have found that mumps orchitis is responsible for testicular damage and it can cause male infertility. Again, just like female, if the man is taking some medicines like some sulfasalazine, sometimes these type of medicines are advised for some severe pain, rheumatological conditions like rheumatoid arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis, etc. If the man received chemotherapy for cancer at various organs, or if he received radiation to the pelvis or radiation to the scrotum, in that case it can cause male infertility. Genetic factors like some genetic factors like Klinefelter syndrome, this can be responsible for abnormal sperm production. Undescended testicles. Remember, as I mentioned, the two testicles should be inside the scrotum from birth. But there are some babies, some male babies, whose testicle, basically remember what happens when the baby is inside the mother's uterus. Initially, the testicles are remaining inside the abdomen, inside the tummy. Then before birth, the testicles come down to the scrotum. But there are some babies, some male babies, whose testicles, one or both testicles, fail to descend to the scrotum. And if it is left untreated, it can cause infertility. And unfortunately, we have many adult men, even men whose age are 35, 40, they are having undescended testicles. That is, they are not having any single testicle inside the scrotum, and nobody has checked their testicles, and even their parents did not check their testicles from birth. So I will advise, it's important to see if you have male babies, see whether both the testicles are inside the scrotum or not, because it can cause infertility. There is some disease called varicocele. What is this? Above the testicles, there are some veins. If the veins are dilated, it is called varicocele. Varicocele is particularly common in people who are standing for prolonged time. Like commonly we see the varicocele in army men, in the traffic police, and in teachers or lecturers. All types of varicoceles do not cause infertility. There are only certain types of varicoceles, which are severe types of varicocele that can cause infertility, and only in few cases we advise surgery. Therefore, presence of varicocele does not mean that it's a severe problem, and most of the varicocele can be left without any treatment. High temperature in the scrotum. As I mentioned initially, that sperm production requires lower temperature than the body. If the scrotal temperature is increased, if the man is using very tight undergarments all the day, if he is sitting for prolonged time, if he is he's driving, particularly driving a bike or cycle for prolonged time, if he is using the mobile phone in the pockets of the trousers, or he is using the laptop, keeping it in the lap. In that case, the total temperature may increase, and it can affect the sperm production. Smoking and alcohol, as in female, they are responsible, and obesity. Remember, the weight loss can improve the sperm production. And one thing has not been mentioned here. Sorry, I forgot to mention it. That is fungal infection. If the man is having fungal infection in the scrotum and the groin area, it can affect the sperm production. And if it is treated, the sperm production can be improved. The second commonest cause of male infertility is the problem in sperm transport. That is, there is some block. One of the commonest reasons for block is surgery. If the man had hernia surgery, sometimes as a complication of hernia surgery, the duct may be blocked, although it's not very common. But what is more common is the infection, tuberculosis, more commonly the sexually transmitted infection like chlamydia, gonorrhea. There are some genetic factors like cystic fibrosis, although it's not very common in India, it's very common in the Caucasian population, but still we sometimes find that there is some disease called cystic fibrosis, and as a result, the two vas deferens, as I mentioned, that two vas deferens are two long tubes that are required for sperm transport. These may be absent since birth, and there are some reasons for which there may be some block since birth. The next issue is that there is no block, but the man is having problem in depositing the sperms inside the vagina because of ejaculatory dysfunction. It may be because of some diseases inside the prostate gland. More commonly, if the man had some surgery in the prostate gland or the surrounding areas, it can cause the ejaculation problems. Diabetes is a very common cause because we see sometimes that diabetic men or even men who has come to us with ejaculatory problem, and on further investigation we find that they are having uncontrolled diabetes. There may be some nerve damage, some neurological injury, particularly spinal cord disease. Sometimes there may be some problems since birth. Some organs are not well developed since birth. Some psychological issues, and there are some drugs that can also cause ejaculatory dysfunction. Lastly, everything is normal, but the man is not able to do intercourse because of erectile dysfunction. Is not having hardness during intercourse. Again, diabetes is one of the important causes. What we see sometimes, men with erectile dysfunction, they are just going to the medicine shop and they are taking Viagra. This is dangerous practice. Why? Remember, erectile dysfunction is a risk factor for cardiac disease, and erectile dysfunction should be thoroughly evaluated because erectile dysfunction may be associated with serious diseases like diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and many other important diseases, hormonal disorders, which we should evaluate. If you take Viagra, your erectile dysfunction may improve temporarily, but you will miss the opportunity to go for further investigation. Of course, smoking, alcohol, again, these are important. Electron, obesity, psychological disorder, and problem in heart, blood, these are important. Regarding the testosterone, I want to mention that there are some people who are taking testosterone for bodybuilding. If you take testosterone, your sexual function will improve. But what happens, the sperm production will be impaired. Therefore, even when your testosterone is low and you are planning to become father, your family is not completed, we don't give testosterone, rather we go for some alternative therapies. Therefore, testosterone should not be used in men in the reproductive age group. Now, if we go by statistics, men are responsible for 30% cases, female for 30% cases. In this 38% case, 25% cases, there may be some unexplained causes. That is, all the reports are normal, still the couple is unable to conceive. And in the rest of the cases, there may be combined factor. That is, men and female both may be responsible. Now, when to visit the doctors? We have idea that a couple should visit the doctors only when he or she is not conceiving or after the woman becomes pregnant. This is totally wrong. Ideally, you should consult a doctor before you are planning for pregnancy, just to ensure that you are entering pregnancy in optimum health and there will be no risk for you as well as for the baby. Therefore, even when you find difficulty in conceiving, when you are planning for pregnancy, please don't hesitate to consult your doctor. Second is, you have to remember the chance of pregnancy. Some people are getting very much disheartened when they cannot conceive within 1 month. They are saying, my sister has conceived within 1 month, my brother's wife has conceived within 2 months of time. Remember, if you have regular intercourse, as I mentioned, 2 to 3 times in a week, in 1 month, the chance of pregnancy is hardly 10 to 15%. That is, out of 100 couples, 10 to 15 can conceive within 1 month. 60 they can conceive within 6 months, and 80% can conceive after 1 year. Therefore, we usually investigate for infertility after 1 year, not before that. Therefore, please don't get disheartened. And this is the statistics I have mentioned. Now, therefore, when you should visit the doctor for infertility? After 1 year of intercourse, if you fail to conceive, but you should visit, you should not wait for more than 6 months if you are having some risk factors for infertility. For example, if the age of the woman is more than 35, as I mentioned, as the age increases, the chance of pregnancy decreases. If the woman is or man is having some disorder, like woman is suffering from irregular periods, PCOS, fibroid, endometriosis, painful periods, irregular periods, diabetes in both men and female, reproductive tract infection like pelvic inflammatory disease or some pelvic tuberculosis, testicular tuberculosis, or some sexually transmitted disease in men or female. If the man is having varicocele, if the man had testicular trauma or tumor, in that case, if you fail to conceive after 6 months, please visit the doctor. If either of the partner, male or female, has surgery, pelvic surgery, genital surgery, some radiation or chemotherapy, cancer treatment, and of course, immediately, if you have severe sexual dysfunction that prevents you from having successful intercourse, in that case, you should not wait. Now, what we see? We first discuss, we take the history, and we discuss the chance of pregnancy, and we counsel the couple. We do clinical examination if needed, that is, we physically examine male and female if required. Preconceptional care, remember this is important. We have to ensure that all the things will be normal after you conceive. Therefore, something called preconceptional care, and that's why we give emphasis on this fact that you should consult doctor even before you are planning for pregnancy. Now, what fertility investigations we are doing? For to see the sperm condition, we advise semen analysis. To see the condition of the ovaries, we do some TVS, transvaginal scan. Remember, ultrasound can be done over the abdomen, but abdominal ultrasound is not very much accurate. That's why we want to prefer TVS, transvaginal ultrasound. That is, we insert the probe in the vagina and see the condition of uterus and ovaries in the better way. And contrary to common perception, please remember TVS is not painful. It may cause little discomfort, but it's not painful. And sometimes we go for some hormonal test in the blood to see the condition of the ovaries. Next, we want to see the condition of the fallopian tubes by something called HSG or HyCOSC. We'll come to it later on. And uterus can be seen by TVS. So these are the minimum investigation required when we are investigating for infertility. Now, preconceptional care. As I am mentioning repeatedly that you should consult a doctor before you are planning for pregnancy. So what does it involve? We check the blood group, we check the thalassemia, we check for one virus called rubella, because if you are affected with rubella in pregnancy, it can cause abnormal lities in the baby. Depends on those. If you have diabetes, we need to check the blood sugar, or if your parents are having diabetes, we need to check your blood sugar. If you are having thyroid problems, we need to check it. If you have high blood pressure, then we need to stabilize it. Of course, please don't forget to take folic acid before you are planning for pregnancy. Continue it, and you should continue it for at least first 3 months of pregnancy, because folic acid is required for brain development of the baby. Lifestyle changes, that is, if you are smoker, then we'll advise quit smoking. If you are overweight, we'll advise reduce weight. And medicine review. If the woman is taking some drugs for epilepsy, thyroid disorder, high blood pressure, or high blood sugar, we need to check this medicine. Sometimes we need to change the medicine, because all the medicines cannot be continued in pregnancy. But remember, please don't change the medicine by yourself. Change the medicine only after consultation with the doctors, because we need to give some safer medicine which are safe in pregnancy for you as well as baby. Now, thalassemia. This is the study we have published in 2015. We have found that babies who are affected with thalassemia major, you know, thalassemia is an incurable disease, and babies affected with thalassemia, they require repeated blood transfusion almost every 3 to 4 weeks. But thalassemia can be prevented by simple blood tests before you are planning for pregnancy, blood tests for both mother and father, the prospective mother and father. But unfortunately, we have found that in 85% cases, the parents came to know that they were thalassemia carriers only after the birth of the first thalassemia affected baby. So therefore, in these 85% cases, we could have prevented the birth of the thalassemia affected baby. How? See, if the wife is carrier, we need to check the husband blood test. If the husband blood test is normal, husband is not carrier, nothing to worry. At the most, your baby can be thalassemia carrier, because thalassemia carrier is not affecting the health. And if you are thalassemia carrier, you usually do not require blood transfusion. On the other hand, if both husband and wife both are carrier, there is 25% chance that your baby will be thalassemia affected. That is, suppose theoretically, if you have 100 babies, out of 100, 25 will be affected. Therefore, we have two options. Sometimes people are saying that if both the husband and wife are thalassemia carrier, you should not get married. This is totally wrong. You can get married and you have baby, but still there are two options. Number one is that you can conceive spontaneously, and by around 12 to 13 weeks, we can do some special test called chorionic villus sampling, by which we are inserting the needle inside the uterus and collecting some cells from around your baby and examining the cells inside the laboratories. If the cells are suggesting that your baby is normal, or if he or she is having thalassemia carrier, nothing to do. But if the baby is affected with thalassemia major, in most cases, the couple decide for not to continue the pregnancy. That is, they go for abortion or termination of pregnancy. There is another alternative option, particularly for those couples who have objection, religious or cultural objection to abortion. In that case, you may go for IVF. In this case, sometimes you may need to go for IVF even when you don't have fertility problem. What we do in this case, we do something called pre-GD, pre-implantation genetic diagnosis. That is, before transferring the embryo, we are checking the genetic composition of the embryo. If an embryo is affected with thalassemia major, we are not transferring the embryo. If on the other hand, the embryo is normal with thalassemia or he or she is carrier, they thalassemia testing before you are planning for pregnancy. Now, testing for rubella, there are lots of myths. Rubella IgG positive. Often we get as a phone calls from patients. Patients are crying like anything. Doctor, my rubella IgG is positive. The laboratory person, the medicine shopkeeper, they have told that my life is gone. What should I do? Remember, if the rubella IgG is positive, nothing to worry. That means you are immune. That means you are protected against rubella, so you do not have to do anything. You cannot have rubella infection in pregnancy, so your baby is safe. On the other hand, if the rubella IgG is negative, in that case, we give rubella vaccine, and then after giving the vaccine, we advise avoid pregnancy for next 1 month. There are some people who are still doing the torch test. Remember, torch test is an obsolete test. It is not done anywhere outside India, and it should not be done. That's why we do not do torch test. Remember, if you are doing torch test, don't see the report. Torch test is an obsolete test. It has no importance in modern care. Vaccination about rubella I have already mentioned. And other tests before pregnancy, as I mentioned, it depends on your condition like thalassemia, like thyroid, blood group, hepatitis B, C, HIV. This may be required in special circumstances. Folic acid, I've already mentioned, because we don't want to see this type of picture where the baby is affected with abnormal brain development. Therefore, if you want to avoid this condition, please start taking folic acid at least 1 month before you are planning for pregnancy. Now the fertility test. Semen analysis. Remember, semen production takes 3 months of time. Suppose if you have fever today, and if you are doing semen analysis after 3 months, your sperm report will be abnormal. So don't get afraid if a single semen analysis is abnormal. We need to repeat the test. And remember, in contrary to common perception, semen has nothing to do with your manliness. Please don't confuse semen with your manliness. Yes, you are not responsible for this abnormal semen report. Masturbation is not responsible for abnormal semen report. And this is not uncommon. You are not only suffering from this male infertility, lots of men are suffering, and there are treatments. So please don't lose hope. And if it is abnormal, most of the time people are requesting, doctor, give me medicine, give me medicine. Remember, before starting medicine, it's important to find out the cause. Therefore, we need to investigate the cause, because it may indicate some serious underlying disorder like diabetes, some hormonal disorder, even cancer. Therefore, we need to find out the cause of abnormal semen parameters. Therefore, we need to repeat the test. We need to do some blood investigations in some cases, like FSH, LH, these are hormonal tests, testosterone. In some cases, chromosomal analysis is required. We need to sometimes do some special ultrasounds called ultrasound of scrotum, or sometimes we need to do the ultrasound called transrectal ultrasound. As I mentioned, for female, we are doing TVS, transvaginal ultrasound. For men, in some cases, we are doing transrectal ultrasound. That is, we are putting the ultrasound probe in the rectum of the man to see the prostate gland and the surrounding areas. And it's far more accurate than doing the ultrasound over the abdomen. Again, transrectal ultrasound, commonly known as TRUS, TRUS, it's not painful, although it may cause little discomfort. Now, how we can check the ovaries? Again, I mentioned about the TVS. Ideally, TVS should be done during the periods, that is between day 1 to day 4 of the periods. Blood for AMH, that can be done on any day. FSH and LH ideally should be done between day 1 to day 4 of the period. Progesterone, very infrequently we are doing it. It can be done on day 21 of the cycle. Now, fallopian tube. Commonly performed test is HSG, or we can do something called CIS, SSG, or HycoC. Laparoscopy is needed in very few cases when there is tube block or you are undergoing laparoscopic surgery for some tuber diseases. Uterus, Most cases we can evaluate the uterus by TVS. Sometimes we need to do SSG or HSG, or sometimes we need to do hysteroscopy. That is, we are inserting the camera inside the uterus and see inside the uterus. This is called hysteroscopy. Now again, there are lots of myths regarding the test. TVS is painful. As I mentioned, TVS is not painful, although it may cause discomfort. And TVS can be done even when you are having bleeding, even when you are having periods. HSG is painful, not at all. It can cause little discomfort and we are giving some painkiller. If there is tubal block, people think that either you have to go for laparoscopy or IVF. No. If there is tubal block by HSG, we can do SSG. In fact, we are doing it. If SSG suggests that there is no block, you can avoid. On the other hand, if the HSG, SSG, HSG both are suggesting that both the fallopian tubes are blocked, in that case, you have to decide whether you should go for laparoscopy or IVF. There are lots of women who are really worried when there is one fallopian tube is blocked and another fallopian tube is open. Remember, one fallopian tube is open, it's enough. If both the fallopian tubes are blocked, then you have to do something. Otherwise, if one fallopian tube is open and another is blocked, you can simply ignore it, because one fallopian tube is enough to have pregnancy. And again, I mentioned that PCOS is not the disease of the cyst, it's rather hormonal disorder. Again, sometimes people are worried when they have low AMH. Remember, low AMH does not mean everything is finished, and low AMH does not necessarily mean that you have to go for egg donor, etc. Even you can conceive naturally depending on other reports. Yes, semen analysis, some people are finding it embarrassing, but we usually advise to do semen analysis from the labs who are providing privacy, who are providing private room where you can be accompanied by your partner, so that you should not have any problem in semen collection. Now, how sperms are collected? The most common method we are following is masturbation, and it's the simple method. But remember, if a man is advised to have masturbation for the first time in the laboratory, it may be embarrassing for him. Therefore, we need to provide relaxation. If still it fails, we can give some medicine like sildenafil, because some men are feeling problem in achieving the hardness in penis during masturbation for semen collection. Therefore, sometimes these medicines can help. If that does not help, we can use some non-toxic condom, because we are getting some men who are not used to masturbation. In that case, we can use some non-toxic condom. But why non-toxic condom is important? Because ordinary condom should not be used for semen collection, because ordinary condom contains some special substances which is pharmaceutical, which can damage the sperm. Therefore, we should use non-toxic condom, that is specialized condom. Even if that fails, then we can use some special device called vibroejaculator. It's available in our centers. It's a small device that the man can apply over the penis, over the erect penis, and it creates some vibration and it stimulates the ejaculation. Some men are suffering from retrograde ejaculation, that is, semen is not coming through the penis, rather it's going inside the bladder, and when he urinates after masturbation, the sperms can be found in the urine. In that case, we are doing the post-masturbation urine collection, that is, we are advising the men do masturbation, pass the urine after masturbation, and we need to check the urine for sperms.
ভরত, তোমার ভিডিওটাকে একটু অফ করবে? ভরত, ভিডিওটাকে অফ করো। হ্যাঁ, ভিডিওটাকে অফ করো, ভিডিওটা অন আছে।
ঠিক আছে?
হ্যাঁ, ঠিক আছে। নীলাভ, স্ক্রিনটা আসছে না কিছু। নীলাভ,
স্যারের কানেকশনটা কেটে গেছে।
আচ্ছা,
স্যার তো দেখাচ্ছে। স্যার স্যার শুনতে পাচ্ছেন?
I'm sorry.
হ্যাঁ,
Hello. I think I got disconnected.
yeah,
Hello.
yes,
Yeah. Okay.
yes, yes.
So we are starting from where we are there. So I apologize for the poor internet connection. Okay. So we were there. I think you came to know about the sperm collection, and sometimes in extreme cases when the couple is requiring IVF and the man cannot give semen, in that case we can collect the sperms from the testicles using some needle called SRTC, etc. Now remember, if the man is having azoospermia, it does not mean end of everything. Even in that case, he can become biological father. Rather, we can do surgical sperm collection. That is, we can collect the semen from the testicles by using a small needle or using a small cut in the testicle. And it can be done as outdoor the basis where the man does not require hospital admission, and rather he can go home within 3 to 4 hours. Now the treatment of infertility. It can be treatment of the cause like medicine from hormonal disorder, like thyroid disorder, we are giving some medicine. It can be surgery for laparoscopy for fibroid endometriosis or hysteroscopy for some polyp. We can just ask the couple try naturally. We can ask the couple, you can try naturally, but with some medicine. That is, if the wife is not having ovulation, we have to give medicines for ovulation induction. Or we can have some process like assisted reproductive techniques like IUI, IVF, ICSI, etc. The ovulation induction. It can be given in the form of tablets or injection. Usually, we start the tablet from day 2 or 3 of the period, and it can be continued for 5 to 7 days. We need to do TVS for at least 3 to 4 days from day 9, and we have to advise the couple to have frequent intercourse. But remember, sometimes we see that the women are taking the medicines for ovulation induction like clomiphene or letrozole at home. It should be discouraged because we need to see whether your ovaries are responding to it or not. The success rate is 10 to 15% per cycle. That is out of 100 women if they are having ovulation, and if they are having regular intercourse, 10 to 15 can conceive within 1 month. We can continue it for 4 to 6 months. There is no use of continuing it beyond 4 to 6 months because sometimes we see that some couple they are taking ovulation induction for years after years. It will not help, rather it's the waste of valuable time. Remember, when it will not help, if the husband's sperm condition is very poor, if you have severe endometriosis, if your both the fallopian tubes are blocked, if you are very low AMH, in that case ovulation induction is not going to help. Now, intrauterine insemination. What is this? This is a simple treatment. We are giving the medicines, that is, we are doing the ovulation induction. We are giving the medicines for the eggs to grow in the ovaries. Then, when the eggs are growing to certain size, we are asking the husband to come and give the semen sample. We collect the semen sample. We are processing it. It is washing, unwashing, and we are in just this washed pump inside the uterus with a small tube. And remember, IUI is not painful. The success rate is again 15 to 20%. Some women they are feeling very much frustrated after the one cycle of IUI fails. Remember, you have to have realistic expectation. That is, the success rate is only 15 to 20%. Out of 100 couple doing IUI, 15 to 20 can conceive after 1 month. We can continue of IUI for maximum 4 to 6 months. There is no use of doing IUI years after years. When to do it? Particularly IUI is helpful if there is mild male factor problem, mild problem
The shooter has been disconnected. Hello, are you there?
Ah,
I think Dr. Dasgupta has been disconnected.
his internet is having some issues. এমনি উনি ডিসকানেক্ট হয়ে যাচ্ছেন, মানে এখান থেকে
Auto
কিছু হচ্ছে না।
disconnect somehow or other auto disconnected. Maybe some networking issues.
আসছে না।
Okay. Okay, I don't know why my internet is just not cooperating with me today. Okay.
নো প্রবলেম স্যার, কোনো অসুবিধা নেই, আপনি
Okay, just a minute. Where I was there, I think I was there in the IUI. Okay. So, and we need to know when the IUI is not helpful. If you have both the tubes blocked, if the husband is having severe problem in the semen, in that case, IUI using husband sperm will not help. If you have severe endometriosis, or if your ovaries are not functioning well, then IUI will not help. The next is in vitro fertilization, IVF. First, we want to stimulate the ovaries so that we can get number of eggs from the ovaries. Then what we do, we collect the eggs from the ovaries under anesthesia. We put a small needle inside the vagina and collect the eggs. This day we call it day 0. Then the eggs are fertilized with the sperms in the laboratory. Then embryos are produced. Then depending on the condition of the embryo, we can transfer the embryo on day 3 or day 4 or day 5. Excess embryos are frozen, and after embryo transfer, after 14 days, we advise to have blood for beta HCG, that is to check for pregnancy. There is something called ICSI. Remember, ICSI is a special type of IVF. In conventional IVF, we are just keeping the sperms, and the base sperm will go to the go inside the eggs by itself, and it will be fertilized. In ICSI, particularly ICSI is helpful when there is severe problem in husband sperm. In that case, the embryologist in the laboratory under the microscope selects the best possible quality of sperms, and the single sperm is injected inside the egg. And this is called ICSI, or intracytoplasmic sperm injection. And thus, the chance of fertilization is slightly higher with ICSI, even when there is no male factor problem. Now, what are the myths about IVF? Lots of myths. Successes. Some people say IVF করলে হবে না. Some people are having idea that the chance is 100%. Remember, the success rate is 40 to 50%. That is, if 100 couples are doing IVF, 40 to 50 can conceive after 1 month. It's very painful. There are lots of women asking, doctor, is it very painful? No, it's not at all painful, because the embryo transfer is not done without the egg collection is done under anesthesia, so there is no question of pain. Embryo transfer is just like TVS. It can cause little discomfort, but it's not painful. And we are no longer giving any painful injection for IVF. So IVF is not painful. Safety. Remember, IVF is absolutely safe. There are lots of myths that after IVF, I have to lie down in the bed throughout pregnancy. Remember, bed rest is not helpful in improving the success rate and reducing the risk of miscarriage. Rather, bed rest will increase the risk of miscarriage, and it can harm the mother and baby. Therefore, bed rest is not advised. There are some women, they think that the IVF is something totally artificial and it will be inside the test tube. Remember, the embryos will be transferred in very early stage, and all the other people will see that just like other pregnancy, your tummy is growing, the baby will grow inside your womb, and you can feel the pain, you can feel the nausea, vomiting, you can feel the baby's movement, baby will be delivered from your uterus. So there is nothing called test tube. When to do it? There are different conditions. If your husband's sperm's condition is very bad, husband is having azoospermia, ejaculatory dysfunction, if you have severe endometriosis, or your your ovaries are not functioning, and or your both the fallopian tubes are blocked, in that case only a way of conceiving is IVF. On the other hand, IVF is not the first line treatment for mild male factor problem, PCOS, unexplained infertility, or low AMH. But if all other treatments have failed, that is, you have tried number of cycles of ovulation induction, IUI, etc., in that case, you should go for IVF. Now, there are lots of uncertainties about IVF. We need to explain them. When we are giving injection for stimulating the ovaries, there is no guarantee that ovaries will respond to it. We'll explain you the time to time what problem is arising. Next, when we are stimulating the ovaries, that does not mean that we can always be able to collect the eggs from the ovaries. And even when we get the eggs, that does not mean that all the eggs will be of good quality. Even we get good quality eggs, there is no guarantee that when we give the sperms inside the eggs, there will be fertilization and formation of embryo. And all embryos may not be of good quality. So if we overcome all of these embryos and we get to manage some good qualities of embryos, and then we transfer the embryos, if we are doing IVF for 100 couples, 40 to 50 can conceive after 1 month. Now there are lots of myths and realities. Remember, IVF is not the only treatment for infertility. As I mentioned, there are only few couples for which IVF is the only treatment, like both fallopian tube block, severe problem in the sperm, severe endometriosis. Otherwise, you can try ovulation induction or IUI. If that fails, then you can go for IVF. Some people are asking, doctor, is there any guarantee that my sperm will be given or my egg will be given? Say yes, 100%, because without the woman, husband and wife's consent, we cannot use the donor sperm or donor egg. Confidentiality, some people say that we don't want to disclose with anybody that we are going for IVF. We tell them, yes, confidentiality is important issue. Without your consent, we are not going to tell, even we are not going to tell your parents that you are going for IVF. So confidentiality is 100% guarantee. There are lots of misconceptions. As it is IVF, something quote unquote artificial, the babies will be abnormal. Remember, even in normal pregnancy, the babies may be abnormal. There are lots of causes for abnormalities in the baby. Even in IVF pregnancies, the babies may be abnormal. But remember, the babies will not be abnormal because of IVF. So IVF does not increase the chance of abnormalities of the baby. Please remember it. If it fails, what next? As I mentioned, there are few people who require IVF only as a treatment for conception. But for most of the couples, there are some alternate options. Even you can conceive naturally after IVF, and we have lots of patients who are conceiving naturally after failed IVF. Now, what decides the mode of treatment? What treatment you require? Simple treatment, operation, medicine, IUI, IVF, ICSI. We need to see in the investigation report the condition of sperms, the condition of your tubes, the condition of your ovaries. Age is important factor, particularly the female age. If the female age is more than 35, the chance of pregnancy declines drastically. Duration of infertility. If you are trying for pregnancy, you have been trying for pregnancy for more than 3 years, 4 years, then chance of pregnancy by natural means declines. Therefore, we need to expedite the treatment. And of course, is the negotiation process. Sometimes patients are not agreeing with our treatment. In that case, we have to respect our patient wishes. We need to go for their affordability, because some treatments are costly, they may not afford it. And what decision they are taking, we need to pay respect to the decision. There is something called third-party reproduction, that is donor sperm, donor egg, or surrogacy. But in all cases, the treatment that donor sperm or donor egg and surrogacy can be used only after consent from both the husband and wife. Without their consent from both, we cannot use. Donor sperm we can use only as for IUI for those couples who are not who cannot afford the IVF using the husband's sperms, or when even despite repeated attempts we could not collect any sperms from the testicles of the husband. Donor egg is used for women whose ovaries are not functioning or whose self-cycle IVF failed. And surrogacy is for women whose uterus is severely damaged and previous attempt of embryo transfer has failed. Now, the field of infertility is constantly changing. There are lots of advancements regularly. As I mentioned, there is something called pre-implantation genetic diagnosis. That is, we can check the embryos for genetic defects, and then we can transfer the embryos. And by this means, couple who are having genetic problem, even they can become biological parents. There is no need of donor gametes in these cases. We know that cancer can affect your fertility. When you are diagnosed with cancer, before you are going for chemotherapy or radiation, you can freeze your eggs, you can freeze your sperm, so that after you are cured from cancer, you can become biological parents. So don't forget to discuss with your doctor if you are unfortunately diagnosed with cancer, or if you're somebody in, or some of your relatives are diagnosed with cancer. As I mentioned, commonly we are transferring the embryos on day 3, but nowadays we are transferring the day 5 embryos, that is 5 days old embryos are transferred. This is called blastocyst, and it improves the chance of pregnancy. And one thing has revolutionized our treatment, that is freezing. We can freeze the embryos for 5 years, 10 years, even more than this. We can freeze the eggs, freeze the sperm. Even suppose you are planning to delay pregnancy, you are 32, but you are thinking that you cannot take pregnancy before 38. You can do IVF, you can collect the eggs, or you can collect, we can form embryos if you have partner. Then we can freeze the embryos and we can transfer the embryos when you are ready. Therefore, even when your biological clock is advancing, you can still become biological mother. The cost is of course a factor, because some people think that infertility treatment is a luxury in our country, in the developing country, when most people cannot uh, do their essential treatment. And unfortunately, in our country, IVF is not government funded, unlike UK. And unfortunately, very few insurance companies are funding for IVF, but still there are some hopes, because some insurance companies are coming with it. Now remember, infertility is different from other diseases. Infertility is not something life-saving. Infertility is not something essential treatment. If you do not treat infertility, your life will not be endangered, but it leads to stress. It can affect the conjugal life, it can affect the sexual life. There are lots of pressure from family, peers group, and the couples are avoiding social interaction. They are not going for any social gathering. And the success is limited. Even see, we say that IVF is the best treatment, but even with the best treatment, the success rate is 40 to 50%. Therefore, infertility is something different from some removal of the tumor from your womb that can cure you. But infertility is not something like that. So we need to understand infertility in different way, and there are percentage gain. Sometimes people are asking, doctor, in one clinic they told that the success of IVF is 90%. We say that this is wrong, because internationally the success rate of IVF is 40 to 50%. And remember, it's a percentage game. If you are conceiving with IVF, to you it is 100%. If you are not conceiving, to you the chance is 0%. Therefore, whatever percentage we are telling, we don't know whether you actually will conceive or not. So it depends on the chance factor. I will end by quoting Bertrand Russell, that is, science may set limits to knowledge, but should not set limits to imagination. I hope in near future, we will be able to improve the success rate of infertility treatment to nearly 80 to 90%, but still now it's still 40 to 50%. If you have further query, please, you can visit, this is my Facebook page, or you can send it to mail personally to this mail ID. And this is the important picture that I show, because I have to salute the willpower of this woman. This couple came to me with PCOS. The woman had PCOS. The man had severe sexual problem. He was not interested in having any intercourse. The woman decided for IUI. First cycle, IUI failed. Second cycle, she conceived. Then there was triplet, 3 babies inside the uterus. We advise reduction. That is, sometimes we can reduce and damage one baby and keep the triplet convert the triplet into twin. The lady asked me, doctor, you are saying that I will be having problem with triplet, but is there guarantee that I will not be having any problem with twin? Or is there, you can say that all the cases of triplet I will be having a problem? I say no. This lady landed up with several complications in pregnancy. She developed gestational diabetes mellitus. That is diabetes in pregnancy. She developed liver disease. She developed thyroid problem. Her placenta was low, so she was likely to have bleeding during delivery. The babies were not growing well. The babies were very low birth weight. And unfortunately, at 27 weeks, she broke her membrane. At 27 weeks, we had to go for cesarean section. One baby birth weight was 1 kg. Second baby's birth weight was 700 gram, and third baby's birth weight was 650. But after the struggle of 1 month in NICU, the lady went home with all 3 babies, and it was the incident of 2017. and till now she's very much grateful to us, and she's regularly sending the picture of the babies, and till now the babies are going to be 4 years. So this is the rewarding story of infertility treatment. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for that wonderful presentation. And it was a very, that last point was very good to see, the triplet. And I just,
Thank you so much.
and now I just asked, question is, if there is any question from the forum, you can ask sir now regarding this topic, because I think that sir has explained it in an absolutely common man's language, which everyone can understand what is the basics of infertility. So if there is any question from any one of you in the attendees, please, you can unmute yourself and ask sir. Or else, sir, I have one question from my side,
Yes,
sir.
yes, 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 yes.
As now the situation is that now everything is related to this COVID, this COVID-19.
Yeah.
So what is the change in this treatment of infertility? Is there any change for this infertility segment, and how it is affected?
Yeah, see, the COVID has affected our infertility segment since 2020 March. Okay, because as I mentioned, infertility is not something essential, and see, COVID has particularly many people have been affected financially. Many people have lost their jobs. Okay, so we see that from 2020 March, we have seen that many people who actually require treatment, they are not coming for treatment just because of financial issue. And of course, when there is lockdown, there are some problems in communication, transport services. So we have found that the couples who are requiring treatment, particularly there are some couple who for whom we should not delay the treatment. That is couple who are aged, whose age is nearly 40, who are having severe problem in sperms or eggs. Because if we leave them untreated, their sperm count or egg count can decrease further. But unfortunately, many of them are not able to come to the clinic. Although our clinics are open, we are doing the fertility treatment with all the precautions, all the COVID precautions. But many people are not able to come either because transport problem, or even when the transport problem is not there, but because of the financial issue. So I think that I apprehend that this problem can affect the infertility segment, and many infertile couples will continue to be affected by this COVID and the resulting financial issue for next 6 months to 1 year.
Thank you, sir. So anyway, any question is there? Any other question? Or else we can end the session. Sir, I think one question has come. Is ovulation detection kit is helpful when to be conceived?
No, ovulation injection kit is not helpful because it has many fallacies. It cannot accurately tell you whether you had ovulation or not. Rather, it will tell you the time when you are likely to ovulate. And again, there are false positive and false negative results. Ovulation, if you have intercourse only using ovulation detection kit, again, I'll mention that it will increase the stress, particularly the sexual life will suffer. Ovulation detection kit is only reserved for them, the couples who cannot have regular intercourse because of some professional commitments. Suppose the husband is living at Durgapur, the wife is living at Shiliguri, so they cannot meet regularly. Only in that case, ovulation detection kit may be used, but we always discourage to use ovulation detection kit because it will increase the stress.
So thank you, sir. And any other question? So I think the the way you have explained, sir, I think everyone is clear about infertility now. So basics of infertility.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, sir, and definitely we will look forward for your future. We will be associated with a lot of such interesting subjects from your side. We'll get a lot of insights from you. And
Thank you so much.
so thank you, sir.
Yeah, I'd like to thank the Bharat Siram and the team for inviting me and for this for arranging this awareness program, because this is something I will say this is something unique, because we are always interacting with our colleagues, with the doctors in medical languages, in the medical jargons, which are sometimes difficult to understand for the people. So I'll thank Bharat Siram for taking this noble initiative. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. So, Meghnad,
And thanks to the audience also who are patiently hearing these all programs. So thanks to them also.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
So thank you and good night to everyone.
Yeah.
Have a wonderful day and stay safe.
Thank you.